Welcome to Tigard City Council. I'm going to call this Tigard City Council and Local Contract Review Board meeting to order. City Recorder Kreger, please call roll.
Youth Councilor Mainini.
Here.
Councilor Gradusi.
Present.
Councilor Hu.
Here.
Mayor Lube.
Here.
Councilor Robbins.
Here.
Councilor Schlack.
Here.
Councilor Shaw.
Here.
Council President Wolf.
Here.
Thank you. If everyone will please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, everyone. We're so excited to have you here tonight. We have a couple of proclamations to start off with. Our first is honoring the life and service of Senator Aaron Woods. There is our former senator on the screen for you. Senator Aaron Woods was a senator over Senate District 13, which included all of Tigard and Sherwood and Wilsonville. And he was a distinguished public servant, dedicated his life to the betterment of Oregon, Washington, Clackamas, and Yamhill counties, and to the city of Tigard in particular. He was elected to represent the Oregon Senate District 13 since 2023, and he was a passionate advocate for equitable access to technology, championing affordable, high-speed broadband as a fundamental right for all Oregonians. He was committed to enhancing transportation, safety, and economic development, co-sponsoring legislation to extend the West Side Express service line from Beaverton to Salem, improving regional connectivity and supporting local economies, and an advocate for the jurisdictional transfer of Hall Boulevard, where it runs through Tigard, to support safe and accessible mobility for all Tigard residents. I just also really want to add that the senator was a really great friend. He was an individual we could call on and let him know what the city, our views on different issues that are going on in the state legislature that have a huge impact on Tigard. And he took some really bold votes. And he took some votes last year that went against some of his caucus, but it's because he listened to the city and he listened to our concerns, and he brought that down to Salem with him. So we will miss Senator Aaron Woods, and we just wanted to issue this proclamation really honoring his life and the service to our community and to our region. I'd also like to open it up if anybody else on the city council wanted to share anything about the senator. Yeah, Councilor Shaw.
Thank you, Mayor. And I had the pleasure to work with and be a friend with Senator Aaron Woods, and he was not only just insightful, but he also was a champion for the environment and helped move through the legislature with the electric vehicle rebate bill and some modernization of that. So I just want to honor him and say thank you to him and condolences to his family.
Thank you. So I just want to officially proclaim May 6th as a day of remembrance and gratitude for the life and service of Senator Aaron Woods. Our next proclamation tonight is the Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month proclamation, and we have Finance Director Kang and Community Development Director Kirkland to accept the proclamation. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Lube and councilors. I know you have a busy schedule tonight, so my comments will be brief. This year's proclamation is quite special to me. 50 years ago, my parents brought their 8 children to America as refugees at the end of the Vietnam War and the start of the Pol Pot regime. While pregnant with my youngest brother, they settled in Oregon and raised their 9 children. Over these many decades, most of us have chosen to raise our families here in Oregon as well, specifically in the Portland region. While I fondly remember growing up is how communities welcomed us from church members to public school teachers and strangers that became lifelong friends. They are ones that helped us transition and grow roots here in Oregon. It is one of the reasons I am drawn to public service, and it's an opportunity to help build communities that supported me and my family many years ago. I'm proud to be an Asian American, and I thought I would share what I would hope is a positive immigration story to the community. So thank you, City of Tigard, for this proclamation. Now I turn over to my colleague, Finance Director King, for his remarks.
Thank you, Community Development Director Kirkman. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for this proclamation. Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month is more than just a celebration. It's a reminder of identity, history, and resilience. It's a time of reflection, connection, and pride in the journey that brought me and many of us here. As someone who was born to South Korean immigrants, AAPI Month is a reminder of my roots and the legacy that I carry. My parents came to the United States with hope, resilience, and the belief that hard work could create a better future. They arrived with limited resources, leaving a recovering post-Korean War country, but arrived with unlimited determination. Growing up, I saw firsthand the sacrifices that they made, working long hours, navigating language barriers, often myself translating for my parents as a child, and doing everything that they could to give me the opportunities that they never had. At home, I was surrounded by Korean culture, the smell of kimchi in the fridge, Korean dramas playing in the background, and the quiet respect woven into family traditions. But outside of the home, I often wrestled with feeling other. And I sometimes felt the pressure to hide parts of my identity just to fit in, to speak English without an accent, to bring sandwiches to school for lunch instead of Korean food, and to explain away the things that made me different. As I've grown, I've realized that those differences are not something to shrink from. They're something to celebrate. And AAPI Heritage Month is a reminder of that truth. It's time to honor the stories of our ancestors, to celebrate the vibrant contributions of the AAPI community, and to stand proud in who we are. This month reminds me that my story is part of a larger tapestry, one woven with courage, culture, and community. And I carry my Korean heritage with pride, and not just in my last name or in the food that I eat, but in the values that I live by. AAPI Heritage Month is a time to reflect, to uplift, and to shine a light on the stories that deserve to be heard. Thank you, Mayor and the City Council, for this proclamation.
Thank you both for sharing your personal stories with us, and really helping to bring to life the importance of the Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. It is chosen in May for two important milestones: the arrival of the first Japanese immigrants to the United States on May 7th, 1843, and contributions of Chinese workers to the building of the Transcontinental Railroad, which was completed on May 10th, 1869. And it's just a really important month recognizing and celebrating the diverse histories, cultures, and contribution of Asian American citizens, residents, and immigrants in this region. And I'm incredibly grateful that we have such a vibrant AAPI community. Thank you for being here today. We are happy to take a picture with you and present this to you. So The next proclamation we have is Move with the Mayor and Move for May. Nationally, the month of May is an opportunity to get active with the mayor of your town. This is the second year that I am participating in it, and I'm encouraging everyone to try to get activity for 30 minutes a day. In beautiful weather like this, please do it outside. And it's a wonderful opportunity to remind us how important it is to take some time for ourselves and for our bodies. And I struggle with finding 30 minutes a day. I assume many of you struggle as well. Sometimes I think I started the month off in DC and I was able to walk around a bit, but at home it looks a little different, like gardening. I got my plants in the ground, and we have some activities that we hope that you join us. On Saturday, we are connecting the Fano Creek Trail, and we are also doing the monthly meetup with the mayor, which is going to be walking the trail. So please come out on Saturday and do that with us. We also have yoga later this month. Come do yoga with us, and lots of fun activities. So you can download the sheet off of the website and just fill in the bubbles when you get some activity, and then there are some really great, incredible prizes that you can win when you turn them in. So please try to get outside, try to get some movement in. It doesn't have to be something substantial. It can just be taking a walk outside or just little bits and pieces throughout the day. But that is also the month of May. And the final proclamation tonight, which is the reason I think most of you are here, and we're so grateful that you're here tonight, we have a proclamation honoring Tigard High School thespians, and we have several individuals who are here to accept it. You're welcome to, if you want to just come on up while I talk about the proclamation a little bit. Tonight we are honoring you, the theater students at Tigard High School who have demonstrated remarkable talent, passion, and dedication through their participation in the Oregon Thespian State Festival held in Salem this past April. These students received multiple accolades and awards at the festival, distinguishing themselves among their peers across the state through excellence in performance, technical theater, and artistic expression. The achievement of these students have earned them the prestigious opportunity to advance to the International Thespian Festival to be held in Bloomington, Indiana in June of this year, where they will represent Tigard, Oregon on a national stage. The accomplishments of these students reflect not only their individual talents and hard work, but also the unwavering support and guidance of their teachers, mentors, families, and the broader school community. The City of Tigard is proud to celebrate the arts and recognize the positive impact that creative expression and theatrical education have on youth development, confidence, teamwork, and cultural enrichment. Therefore, I, Heidi Lube, the mayor of Tigard, do hereby proclaim recognition and commendation for the Tigard High School thespians, their director, and their entire support team for their outstanding accomplishments at the Oregon Thespian State Festival, and extend our full support and congratulations as they prepare to attend the International Thespian Festival in June. The City of Tigard encourages all residents to join in recognizing and celebrating the achievements of these talented young artists whose hard work and passion exemplify the vibrant spirit of our community.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Sorry. Also, I just want to give a shout out to, we had a student thespian board member on this year, Jose Salas, who represented Tigard and the state of Oregon. He almost single-handedly ran our state festival this year as an STO, and unfortunately he will be graduating. But I want to give a shout out to, I want to give a shout out to each of these students and their parents and the community. I came to this community and it's been so welcoming, and I myself am the equity board member for the State of Oregon Thespians, And I really believe that if you see yourself on stage, you see yourself in the world, and these kids have made it possible for others to see themselves in this world. So thank you for recognizing these students because they deserve it.
I would love if you actually want to turn that microphone back on, and then if each of you could just introduce yourselves with your names, I think that would be fantastic.
I'm Sumi Aiken.
I'm Peyton Keck.
I'm Mariah Fogaleon.
I'm Jaina Cloud.
Hi, I'm James Wilson.
I'm Asher Bond.
I'm Nathan Tran.
Hi, I'm Vera Hardy. I'm Meg Hadu-Pollen.
Hi, I'm Judah Haynes.
I'm Kit Cowan.
And I'm Jose Salas.
And I'm Tori Lee Scholes, their troop director and teacher. And we also have Alice in Wonderland coming up this weekend. I will do a shameless plug for these kids. And we have posters if you would like one. So thank you. Thank you.
I just want to say congratulations. The City of Tigard is so proud of you, and we can't wait to see what you do nationally. We'll be following you and tracking you, and I just really appreciate your contribution to the arts and all of your incredible hard work. I know Council President would like to say something.
So just real quick, if Nathan is any representation of the talent that you all have, many of us saw him receive his scholarship award on Friday night, and was just such a joy, so entertaining, just so much fun. And I am I am a Hoosier, I'm a graduate of Indiana University, and I'm assuming if you're attending Bloomington, you'll be on campus, and it's an amazing university if you haven't been there before. So just enjoy Bloomington and the facilities. It's I've seen many theater productions there, and it's a few years ago, I'll just say that, but it's fantastic. So enjoy. Thank you.
All right, we would love to take a picture with you and present this proclamation. Thank you, everyone. We will move on to public comment. The call-in number is 503-966-4101. And those wishing to comment should call in now to get into the queue, or if you are testifying by video, please log in. Anyone present wishing to comment should sign up at the public comment form at the entrance of the room. Those wanting to comment during agenda number 9, the Local Contract Review Board public hearing, should call in when that item is announced. There is a separate sign-in sheet for the LCRB public hearing, also at the entrance of the room. For written public comment, 2 comments were received by noon yesterday. One was from George Miller regarding food carts, and the other one was from Rafael Palejos regarding the Tigard Senior Center services. We do have one person signed up in person. Please come on up, introduce your name and the city that you live in, and then you have 2 minutes for your public comment. And that individual is George Miller. Come on up, George. Right. Welcome.
Thank you. The first thing I'd like to say is I, too, will certainly miss Senator Woods. He was an amazing individual and a real role model for all of us. So I share that with you. The other thing is, again, I want to invite everybody to come out to our pod and learn about all these stuff like fats, oils, and grease, fire safety, how close you can put the carts together, setbacks, all these issues I would love to show you out at our pod. The other thing I'd like to do is emphasize what I sent to you about, I think we have a great opportunity to use the city's database to look into our lands and see which ones are suitable for carts. Not get some quantitative, which are, but also quantitative, how many food carts can we put out there? That's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you,
1
George.
minute exactly.
Oh. Mr. Vang, are there any phone callers in the queue or anyone wishing to testify by video this evening?
No callers, Mayor.
All right. Thank you so much. We will move on to the city manager report. And we have current deputy assistant manager, but I think future interim assistant manager, Emily Trich, to give a report.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. It is a pleasure to be with you. I wanted to take a moment to appreciate the service of interim city manager Rob Drake. His last day was April 26th, and he served Tigard very well. We benefited from his knowledge and experience, and it was a wonderful time together. Now we look forward to our incoming city manager, Mr. Brent Stockwell, who joins us June 1st. And so I'm really pleased at how the team has come together to address any needs and fill in any gaps in the interim. There's a lot of exciting news to share. Last Sunday, the farmers market opened and began another wonderful season, and 2 new food cart pods as part of our Launch Pod program opened up as well. They are the Exotic Egg Rolls and Paradise Grinds food carts at Universal Plaza, and they're joined by Wow Cow, which continues to be another great food destination. So we're hoping the community can come by Universal Plaza sometime, farmers market, or any day to enjoy some of those offerings. Mayor, you mentioned this Saturday's event. There's the Move with the Mayor on Saturday. That's also going to be a celebration of the new segments of the Fano Creek Trail. We'll have a ribbon cutting for that as well. And then this Saturday, the Tigard Parks and Recreation group is hosting a Mother's Day tea at the Tigard Senior Center. A number of wonderful offerings at the library, just a couple I wanted to feature for you today. Just over the weekend, we had 20 members of our Spanish-speaking community attend the Family Craft in Your Language event, where attendees were invited to paint their own art and receive a free book to keep, thanks to the Friends of the Tigard Library. The next Spanish-focused Family Craft event will be Saturday, August 9th. And another new offering at the library is the Basic Needs Bookshelf. This gives library visitors access to basic needs, including water, snacks, feminine hygiene products, socks, and more, while our social services coordinator, Rin Starr, is available to provide any sort of services or connect people with anything they might need. Anyone is invited to donate items that they may have through the Amazon wish list or through contacting Rin Starr at the library, either visiting the library or emailing ryn.starr@tiger.or.gov. Thank you very much, Council. Have a nice evening.
Does anyone have any questions on the report? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to approving the employment contract with Emily Trich as an interim city manager, and we have City Attorney Shelby Rahala to introduce this item.
Thank you, Council. This item should be short and sweet, just like the contract amendment. There's really not a whole lot of change. Emily would be keeping her same contract with the addition of 40 hours of paid time off in recognition of her extra duties that she's taking on. This will be through June 2nd, or June 1st, when Mr. Stockwell comes on as permanent city manager. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, comment, or a motion?
Mayor, I'd like to move to approve an amendment to the employment contract with Emily Trich, appointing her interim city manager until new city manager Brent Stockwell arrives on June 1st.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments? Yeah. Councilor Hu?
I just want to thank Emily for stepping up for us. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah. Council President?
Enjoy your 40 hours. Much deserved. And leave the work cell at home.
Part of me was wondering if 40 was enough. Yeah. Okay. Seeing no additional comments, all of those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion is adopted by unanimous vote of the council. Welcome, Emily. The next item on our agenda is the Tigard Youth Advisory Council 2025 National League of Cities Conference Review. And we have Alex to come on up and introduce this item. Welcome, Alex.
Hello, good evening, Council and Mayor. I'll just be really brief. We just have a few minutes for the attendees of the National League of Cities Conference to come and talk about their experience. But I'm Alex Richardson. I'm a management analyst in the city manager's office, for anyone who doesn't know me. And I am the staff liaison for Tigard Youth Advisory Council. I've been in this role for a few years. I love it. It's one of my favorite parts of my job, and I really enjoy the opportunity getting to accompany two TIAC members, our president and vice president, as well as our youth city councilor every year to this conference. So I appreciate the ongoing support, and I'd like to invite the students to come up now to talk about their experience. We have youth city councilor Shreya, who's going to be coming on the other side of the dais. And then we have Chloe Wilson, our vice president, and Maddie Vogel, whom you all know, our president. And I'd like to invite them to come up now and talk about the trip. Thank you. You're going first, right?
Hello, Council. My name is Chloe Wilson. I'm the current Vice President of the Tigard Youth Advisory Council, and I'll be kicking it off today. So this is our little review of what we did in DC. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay. So I'd just like to talk about the youth delegation. So the full group that kind of came to DC was me, Shreya, our youth counselor, and then our vice president, Maddie. And I think I speak for all of us when I say that it was a really amazing bonding experience for all of us. It really brought us together as a team. And not only that, but we had the opportunity to meet with Councilor Shaw in a wonderful little coffee morning. And I think that really brought us closer to council, and that felt really good as sort of like a smaller group. Next slide, please. Okay, and our youth sessions. So this was separate from the general session, which is different from previous years. So we had 3 days with Unleash, which is a volunteer organization that really structured our time here. And basically, we got to hear from a bunch of speakers, most notably Steve Patterson, I think that's his name. He is the mayor of Athens, Ohio, and he gave a really great commencement speech. But we were joined by over 300 other youth delegates, and we really got to go into really big deep dives into youth welfare and policy making, and we even got to pitch the plans that we were working on for over 2.5 days. Yeah, we brought home with us some really valuable professional experience, and we're already applying it to what we're doing in the council, and that has been really invaluable to us. Thank you.
Next slide, please. And there were also the general conference sessions, which were with all the attendees. And overall, they had this big theme of bipartisanship, and that was really interesting to see on stage. We heard from Rosie Rios, the chair of America 250, and she's essentially helping with the celebration of America existing for 250 years, which is incredible. And it was really interesting to hear her experience working in Congress and just seeing that in person. We also heard from the West Hollywood mayor, Chelsea Byers, and he stressed the importance of emergency preparedness and reaction, specifically mentioning the fires that West Hollywood experienced. And we learned a lot, I would say, from all the sessions, and especially a few of them, such as his, which were just a different input on the global issues we heard on a local scale. Next slide, please. And Hill Day, one of my favorite days. It's just really inspiring seeing these prominent figures whose choices directly impact our lives, in person. Each time I get more awed. And it makes me wonder what us three, and the rest of TIAC can do when we grow up, especially in local government, because seeing these people really makes them feel like people and less like shadowy political figures. So I asked a question to Rep. Janelle Bynum, and Maddie asked a question to Rep. Salinas at the special meeting that the LOC, specifically Oregon delegates in our district, got to go to. And especially with that special meeting, it was really interesting to see, be in our office and have that one-on-one, 1 on 20, 15. It was a small group, though. Very fun. Next slide, please.
And this was the sightseeing, so of course probably one of our favorite parts and the most bonding was getting to do all the fun things. Shreya and I had been to DC before, but Chloe hadn't, so we showed her around. We did a few nights at the National Mall. We did dinner with Counselor Shaw. That was super fun. We decided to pick the Art Museum for the Smithsonian. It's always a great choice. And then most notably, we did a White House tour, so we were able to do that our first morning in DC. That is a little selfie of us in the gold room, I think. And that was honestly a really life-changing experience. We just got to have a better connection to something so prominent in DC, and kind of got to brag a little bit that was what we started our trip off with. We also had two, dessert events, one with just our group as a youth group with about 300 of us, and then we also had the LOC get together, and that was, I would say, my favorite part of the trip. We really connected with the other youth there, especially from Hillsborough, Tualatin, Lake Oswego. We had a whole gelato meetup, so that was my favorite, just getting to know all the other youth delegates from Oregon, which I would say we were the most prominent state there, so yes. Next slide, please. That's it, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, Councilor Shaw?
Just want to say I did not get to go to the White House, but it looked like it was a fun tour. The National League of Cities president is Mayor Steve Patterson from Athens, Ohio, and a cool little story there. He also grew up with our former mayor, John Cook. They grew up in the same town, so that was fun. the League of Oregon Cities was very impressed by our 3 youth who attended meetings with our congressional members and asked some very good questions. So I was honored to be there with you 3, and it was great to have our bonding moment. Next time we can more, maybe at the White House. It would have been cool. But just want to thank you each. Thank you.
Councillor Slack?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just curious, what was, for each of you, what was your biggest takeaway from the entire experience?
Let's start. I think there was a lot of connection that happened between, so the youth sessions were different from, it was kind of set up differently this year, and I think there was a lot of connections that I made from people, from kids that lived in Pennsylvania, you know, so far, that feels so far, but we have a lot of the same values, and we were working with them the same way. Like, we came forward and we said, this is what we're doing to help with youth welfare, and then they said, this is what we're doing, and I think there's a lot of value in finding the connections that happen that are kind of similar. There's a lot more similarities than differences, which feels unifying, even though we're so far away. I liked that.
And I suppose touching on the slide right before this when Matt, you talked about it, we really did got to meet other yaks that are in Oregon, which is funny. We had to go across the U.S. to meet up with them. But like being in that like small confined area with familiar faces really helped build community because we're all kind of like, there's so many people. But my biggest takeaway, I kind of touched on it a little bit beforehand, was just seeing all those political figures because they're prominent. They make important decisions. Those decisions directly impact our lives, do all the important things, and seeing them as people instead of internet figures or scary beings was really important to me.
I'd kind of like to add on to what Maddie was saying. But additionally, that there were also a lot of people who didn't have the same views as us, and that was what was not shocking, but kind of interesting to face directly, because I think we just as young adults who kind of like live on the internet, we only see that online, especially in the area that we live in. But it was really interesting to see that those internet feuds that happen every single day, 24/7, aren't the reality, and that we can really have some good political discussions when we actually can empathize with people, because we're meeting these kids who are our age and we're getting to know them before we know their political beliefs. And then kind of when that comes out, we're able to have more empathetic conversations, and I feel like we can get a lot more done when we have experiences like this, because we have that understanding of what that's like.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing your trip and your experience. I think these trips are so important for our youth to take and bring back that knowledge and that experience. I, as a sophomore in high school, went on a school trip where we all went to DC, and that was a life-changing experience for me. And it's really great to see that youth in the community I live in now are sort of continuing that and being able to go really far, right? And it's far away from your families, perhaps for the first time on the other side of the country, and it shows a lot of responsibility for you to do those sorts of things. And I'm sure you made Tigard proud with those hard questions that I'm sure you asked the delegation. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is a local contract review board public hearing, an exemption to competitive bidding and approval of findings for the Police and Public Works facility. I will open the public meeting, and anyone wishing to testify by phone may do so. Please call in to get into the queue. It's 503-966-4101. And anyone wishing to comment by video, please log in now. There's also a testimony sheet at the entrance of the room if you'd like to make a public comment on this specific item. And we have Contracts and Purchasing Manager McGowan to give the staff report. Welcome. And I believe Mickey Bragg is also here from OTAC. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, Mayor and Council. For the record, I'm Rosie McGowan, Contracts and Purchasing Manager, and here with me today is Mickey Bragg. If you want to introduce yourself.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. My name is Mickey Bragg. I'm Senior Project Manager with OTAC.
So Mickey is here today representing our project director team for the Police and Public Works Facility project. We are here today to request the City Council, serving as the local contract review board, approve the findings that have been provided in support of an exemption from the competitive sealed bidding process for a public improvement project and grant the exemption to use an alternative contracting method as provided in ORS 279C. As discussed in prior council meetings and communication, the Police and Public Works Facility project is underway and continuing to move along. Council will be provided next week with a full update on that project. At this stage, approving the project delivery method is necessary in order to further build the project team and keep the project moving along as scheduled. Typically, Oregon Revised Statute requires that a construction contractor for a public improvement contract be selected based on the lowest responsive bid, unless there is an exemption to the competitive bidding process that is granted through the process that we are doing here tonight. For the Police and Public Works Facility, the project team recommends that an exemption is used to utilize the Construction Manager General Contract, or CMGC, contracting method, specifically for this project. And in a CMGC project, the general contractor is brought on early during the design phases to help collaborate with the architect in the project. The CMGC would be selected through a competitive proposal process instead of the low bid, and this allows the city to take into consideration factors other than just the price, such as qualifications, project management, references, including an interview process, more of those abilities to help make that selection. Approving the exemption now will allow the project team to move forward with the RFP process and bring the CMGC on board early in the design process as a key component of that project team. As outlined in the findings, the standard design, bid, build, or low build approach is typically an acceptable method for many construction projects. However, projects that are highly complex or have unique aspects benefit from an alternative contracting method. So the Police and Public Works Facility is a large, highly complex project. It involves site-specific and technical issues that are related to the public safety aspects of the building, and they're likely to present unforeseen and unknown conditions. So by utilizing the CMGC method, the city will benefit from having an experienced contractor involved in the design, constructability reviews, and it will allow us to make more informed decisions during the design process on design approach, project cost, risk, schedule, and more. So in order to grant the exemption, the local contract review board needs to approve the findings that were presented that demonstrate that the exemption is unlikely to encourage favoritism or substantially diminish competition for public improvement contracts, and will likely result in substantial cost savings and other substantial benefits to the city. The draft findings that were presented cover the factors that are required in ORS 279C, as well as our own Tigard public contracting rules, and they demonstrate how the exemption meets these conditions. It is also required that we publish public notice and allow comment on the draft findings. And we are having the public hearing here tonight, and the public notice was published on Monday, April 21st, with the findings public for review at that time. So at this time, we can open up for any comments, questions on the findings and the proposed method.
Thank you. There were no written public comments on this item received by noon on Monday. Mr. Vang, are there any callers in the queue or anyone wishing to testify by video this evening?
There are no callers, Mayor.
Thank you. I have the sign-up sheet here. I don't have anyone signed up, but by chance, if anyone missed it, is anyone in the audience interested in public comment? Okay. Seeing none, so there is no response to public testimony by staff. City Council, do you have questions? Reminder, we're in the middle of a public hearing, so this is questions and not comments. Any questions or comments on the finding? No? Okay. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. And now we will have consideration of the LCRB Resolution 25-01. Councilor Shack?
Mayor, I move to approve LCRB Resolution number 25-01.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any additional discussion? Yeah, Councilor who?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank the staff for presenting this alternative contracting method. I totally agree with all the finding of fact, and especially with the uncertainty with the tariff and everything. So I really appreciate your effort with this proposal, and I totally believe that this is the best way for us to move forward, because we need to be nimble going forward with the decision we make. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Hu. Yeah, Councillor Gadusi.
So thank you again for presenting everything the way that you did. I still do have some concerns about the standardization and the transparency, although I do see that overall this would reduce the risk of things like change orders and improve collaboration. But that's still something that lingers in the back of my mind.
Thank you. Council President Wolf?
To comment, similar to Councillor Hu, and I have shared this before, I tremendously support this process. As school board chair, I saw many of our facilities that were complex, and the 2016 bond were completed with this methodology in a very successful way. And I think that from a transparency, whether that's bond oversight, other opportunities to communicate, I think that will be more than possible. But I saw the challenges with design bid build, and I saw the successes with the method proposed. And so I'm very much in favor of this.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Okay. Seeing none, will the city recorder read the number and title of the resolution?
LCRB Resolution 2501, a resolution granting an exemption from competitive sealed bidding for a public improvement contract for the police and public works facility pursuant to Oregon Revised Statute 279C335 and adopting findings in support.
Thank you. Will the youth counselor provide an advisory vote?
Yes.
Thank you. All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion is adopted by unanimous vote of the local contract review board. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the Tigard Lake Oswego Enterprise Zone expiration, and we have Economic Development Manager Howther here to introduce the item. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City of Tigard. My name is Danelle Hawther. I'm the Economic Development Manager for the City of Tigard, and we're here today to present and ask for your direction on our Tigard Lake Oswego Enterprise Zone. So a little bit of history. Natural expiration of our Enterprise Zone is coming up at the end of this fiscal year. Enterprise zones are designated through the state of Oregon for a duration of 10-year period. So the last time you got a chance to talk about this was the original designation in 2014. We started working with our partners at Oregon, Business Oregon, and our partners in Clackamas County, Washington County, and Lake Oswego back in February to discuss the future of the Enterprise Zone and what we thought was a positive way forward. In March, we engaged a consultant, and on the line with us, we have Brendan Buckley with Johnson Economics, who did the Enterprise Zone audit and analysis for us. At this time, I'd like to welcome Brendan to present the findings of the analysis of the Tigard Lake Oswego Enterprise Zone.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Can you give me a thumbs up, Danelle, if you can hear me there? Okay, thank you. I'm going to try to share a few slides. Hopefully I can do that from here. If not, we can, I can wing it a bit, but let me see if I can find it. I can't. Maybe I won't be able to do that from here. One more time. There it is. Okay. Thank you for your patience. I have just a few quick slides to run through the analysis that's included in your packet. All of this information is in that memo, and I'm happy to answer any more questions and provide any additional info that's needed. So, quick overview of your enterprise zone. This is showing it in the map here. So, again, it was adopted in 2014. It includes a portion that's outside of the city of Tigard and inside the city of Lake Oswego. And part of this redesignation process that we were analyzing would be to remove that portion that's within Lake Oswego and keep the rest of the boundary that's within the city of Tigard limits. City of Lake Oswego has indicated that they don't anticipate that their zone will be used anymore, and they also, by removing themselves from the process, don't need to be involved in this redesignation process. So enterprise zone qualifications, there are qualifications laid out in statute of how large enterprise zones can be and sort of their linear distance and dimensions and so on. The Tigard Enterprise Zone fits within all of those qualifications comfortably. It's well short of the 12 square miles that are allowed and within a reasonable distance. So part of looking at an enterprise zone, either with initial designation or redesignation, is seeing if it passes what's called an economic hardship qualification, or if it meets one of these criteria. And so there are a few different measures or metrics that can be used to look at to see if an enterprise zone faces an economic hardship. Those are things like median income, per capita income, poverty rate, or slow population growth. In 2014, look at the census tracts included in the initial enterprise zone found that they met the standard of having a poverty rate that was high enough above the statewide rate to qualify. So we went back and we took a look at the district again to see how it measures up in 2025. And by some measures, the economic hardship in the enterprise zone, we've made some progress, and it no longer really meets the some of these standards. For instance, the poverty rate standard that it initially qualified by. But there are different ways to look at this and to consider whether or not there's an economic hardship. So what we ended up doing is we looked at the census block groups rather than the census tracts. The block groups are a little more narrowly defined, and you can get a little bit closer to the actual enterprise zone boundaries by using block groups instead. So we did that. And we also looked at how the metrics in the enterprise zone match up with the metro area as well as the state, and that's something that's allowed under statute. So what you see in the table here, and this is out of the report, is that we looked up a number of measures for each of these: the state, the metro area, and the census block groups included in the enterprise zone. And we found that by looking at this standard, the enterprise zone does still meet the definition of having economic hardships based on the median income compared to the metro area and the poverty level compared to the metro area. Compared to the state, the enterprise zone no longer meets the standard for under these measurements.
Brendan, can I ask you to go into presentation mode? The slide's just really small on our screen.
Okay. Into presentation mode.
Yep, it's like the one at the bottom that kind of looks like a goblet, right next to the zoom on the bottom right.
Right.
Yep, go a little farther left.
Is that
it's the
it?
goblet. I think it looks like a goblet.
Gotcha.
You have to, I'm being told you have to enable content first, and then you can click on that button. So the
Enable
yellow
content.
banner.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay.
There we go. Okay. And
Thank
then try
you.
it at the bottom.
Is that any better?
Nope.
Okay. I'm not sure I'll be able to do that on my end. I don't know if you're able to make it change the view on your end.
Mayor and Council, if you guys have access to the report submitted with the agenda item, it's on page 3 of the report.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so yes, that table's on page 3 of the report, and you can see the comparison between the different geographies to see to test how those metrics measure up. So the based on that, the area does still qualify. You only really need to meet one of those measures. It's fairly liberally laid out in the statute. So you do qualify by that measure. And so we also took a look at the performance of the enterprise zone as it has been over the last 10 years, just to hopefully give you guys some background and some idea of how it's done so far and what it's done. So the enterprise zone program, what it does is it provides tax abatement for 3 years in return for providing a certain amount of investment and job creation that the company commits to at the outset. So there have been 7 Tigard companies that have participated in the program. There are 9 total uses because 2 of the companies have reused the program again. The participating companies, we have data now from between the years 2016 and 2023. There was incomplete data for the year 2020, but we did the best we could looking at the figures from between those years. And so what we found was that there were over 400 new jobs reported. At the time that the companies applied for the program, they estimated that they would create about 150 new jobs. So they have, they're reporting the creation of well over double the amount of jobs they estimated when they applied for the program. The new investment that is qualified for the tax abatement is estimated at $9.4 million over those years. That's what they're reporting. The estimate originally was $12 million, so slightly less investment has happened than they originally did estimated at the time of application. But because this is all new investment, and new investment to the community, and the tax exemption is being applied to whatever the actual assessed value of the investment is. And so if it does end up being a little smaller than they estimated, all that means is that the amount of taxes being abated is similarly smaller. So we estimate the total foregone tax revenue by all taxing jurisdictions, including Tigard, over that period was about $450,000 in tax revenue. Again, that was over about 7 active years of the program. 80,000 of that was foregone revenue from the city of Tigard. The average foregone revenue per job, again, this is total. This is the amount for each new job that's been created, split between all the jurisdictions, is $1,115 per job. So you can think of that as sort of the amount of public investment that all the jurisdictions have made for the creation of each one of these new jobs. Most investment does remain taxable after 3 years. There's some depreciation, particularly with industrial equipment, but still a solid majority of that new tax value will still be taxable on 3 years when it comes back onto the books, and then you get the benefit of the taxable value. And we compared the job growth that did take place at the participating companies to what the job growth may have been at those companies if it just sort of followed the general industry trend in the corresponding sector in Washington County. And in all cases, the amount of reported job growth was well in excess of that sort of general industry-wide trend. It's not a perfect comparison, but it's we just included that as an indicator, hopefully as a little measure of how that job creation compares to the more general job market. And so that is just a quick overview of how the zone is performed, just so that you know next steps if you want to carry through with redesignation. There's a pretty tight timeline. We need to sort of finish up the analysis and put it in a memo. Then there's the obligation to meet with other jurisdictions, and they require a 21-day notice. The Port of Portland is special, and they require, they actually need to pass a consent item to agree to this, and then it needs to be adopted by the city, and we submit it to the state. So there's a lot that needs to happen in the next couple months in order to get the redesignation done. And I also just wanted to point out that if after this process there was interest in further changing the boundary or making other changes, minor changes, there's a simpler process than what we're laying out here. It's a little easier to do things like that after the fact, and it doesn't require all the same notifications as designation does. So thank you. I'm sorry that my presentation was hard to read, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have and talk more about the memo. Thank you.
Thank you. So Mayor, City Council, as we heard from Brennan, the performance of the zone over the past 10 years has exceeded some of the original expectations and has fallen short on some of the original expectations. This is pretty standard for what we would expect for an enterprise zone with the available land and eligible businesses that we have within Tigard. Enterprise zones are really most effective for jurisdictions that have land to expand, and we're talking new investment. What we have available in the city of Tigard, as you all know, we're very landlocked, in the industrial zones that we have are the industrial zones that we have. So we are really only looking at eligibility of capital investment as one of the 3 eligible categories of investment for companies to participate in the enterprise zone program. So by nature, we do expect a lower participation just because we don't have the new building. I do want to point out that there's indicators in favor of zone redesignation, and there's indicators in favor of letting the zone expire. A couple of the favors for letting the zone expire, we know there's issues with our current zone. As Brendan mentioned, the conditions are very different than the original zone designation 10 years ago. We no longer qualify by straight state metrics alone. We would not qualify under that. However, we do fall under a provision in the ORS that allows us to compare statistically to the metropolitan statistical area, the Portland, Hillsborough, Vancouver statistical area. And we do still qualify barely with 2 of the 3 possible categories there. We know that the current zone is also not in alignment with our eligible industries and business. That being, the zone covers a lot of areas where it's just not feasible for businesses to participate. An example is Washington Square Mall. Enterprise zone is not eligible for retail, for services, so a lot of the businesses that are in those areas. One of the things that we would want to do is really a good industry and zone analysis on what does the appropriate zone look like, especially following all of our code changes with the Tigard Made project last year. We also know that a lot of the taxing jurisdictions that are impacted by this, however small the impact might be, there is still an impact. And we want to acknowledge that partners like our school district, our fire district, are all going out for levies and trying to increase their available pot of operating capital. We understand that this is not an insignificant decision to participate in the economic vitality of the area. On the factors indicating that we should be pursuing renewal, we've got great industry and chamber support to pursue a redesignation pathway. We also have higher than expected good quality job production out of this program, 410 jobs at over 200% minimum wage. These are jobs that are expected to grow and stay and provide a higher level of connection with the companies, because part of the participation of the program is through strict both hiring and workforce training and support programs that the participating companies do agree to for the duration of their participation in the program. And it might sound a little bit like sticker shock, but an investment of $1,115 per job created is very much in alignment with industry standard. If we're looking at the performance of enterprise zones throughout Oregon, we see anywhere from about $400 to about $4,000 as the cost per job. So we feel very confident that at $1,115 per job created, that is a reasonable investment in those. What we're asking for today is if you guys have any questions on what our options are, what our pathways forward look like, if you have any questions about enterprise zone at all, and then looking for your recommendation on staff's path forward if we should pursue redesignation. As Brendan mentioned, we've got a really tight turnaround to work through the process and get that notification in before the zone expiration at the end of June. If your pathway forward is to let the current zone expire, have us fix what we know is wrong with it and pursue redesignation at a later date, city staff is happy to support either pathway, and we welcome your guidance. Thank you.
Thank you. Open up for questions. Councilor Robbins?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Economic Development Manager Halther and our economist for this presentation. I do have a comment/question. If my math is correct, the jobs promised are supposed to exceed 200% of minimum wage. Minimum wage in Oregon for metro areas is $15.05 an hour. So 200% of that is $62,608 a year. I realize that many of these jobs paid more than that, but $62,000 is still below the median income of the area as it is of $70,000. So is there any way is there a way to change this so that the enterprise zone requires jobs that are higher paying than that? Because at $62,608, that's actually bringing down the median income in the enterprise zone, except for if those people were otherwise unemployed. And so it was zero. But so it doesn't, I question giving a bunch of tax breaks, perhaps that's not the best way to say it. I question these benefits if the pay for the jobs is not actually increasing the median income of the residents in the zone.
Thank you for the question, Councilor Robbins. To answer that question, there's two components of the workforce development and part of the program. First, we understand that with growth typically happens from the bottom up. So we're seeing the addition of starting salaries of entry level. So we don't expect this to be at the executive level, at the higher journeyman, advanced master level where these jobs are being created. So we do see the entry level, and then these because there is continuous increase in number of jobs produced, that also means there's an incentive for these companies to keep the jobs that they're creating. So we see longer duration and tenure of the employees that are brought on through this program. In addition, all of the companies agree to a first source hiring agreement, which means that when creating these jobs, the companies agree to work with WorkSource Oregon Employment Department for the recruitment of those employees. So we see them coming from participants of the statewide workforce program, which is typically unemployed or underemployed personnel.
Councillor Schlack?
I see Brandon has a hand up.
Thank you. I wanted to point out that the median income number listed in the chart there is actually median household income. So that's going to be on average more than one income earner per household. So the number that you cited, 60-some thousand, I believe will probably exceed the average, single earner wage in Tigard. Unfortunately, I don't have that data right in front of me, but so it's not exactly apples to apples.
Thank you. That's helpful.
And then my actual question. So, looking at this, I think there's good arguments both ways, but sort of the $64,000 question in my mind is that we just approved council goals, one being elevate economic opportunities for current and future residents with a strategy of attract, retain, and grow a diverse and stable economic base that supports city revenues, needed goods and services, and jobs for community members. Would you be able to explain how either of these may impact positively or either of these options may positively or negatively impact sort of the broader strategy the team is going for?
Councillor Schack, I only have 15 minutes for this topic. When we're looking at the types of industries and companies that are eligible, we're talking about local. And we're talking about matching with WorkSource Oregon participants who are local. So we anticipate that these jobs that are being created are from residents either of Tigard or immediately surrounding, who are also members who are contributing back to the Tigard economy. We're also looking at opportunities to make a statement to say to our business community, we are doing everything we can to make it easier for you to come, stay, set up shop, and grow within the city of Tigard. As you all know, especially the traded sector and our industrial partners within the city are facing a lot of turmoil and chaos and uncertainty. So this is one of those programs that even by saying we support this, it is saying we support you. Whether participation is something that everybody can reach or not, it still does make a statement.
Yeah, Council President.
Okay, there we go. Just two questions. My first one, Agilix, while had one of the largest employee growths, it was a smaller number of employees, but the styrofoam recycling shut down. So I didn't know, do we have faith that these large employers are, continuing and we can see that? And does that have any kind of impact concern of, one of the companies happening? And then my other question is, given the TIF district, what is the value and benefit of kind of double dipping is not the right word because it's a good thing, stacking, thank you, of the zone on top of the TIF, and how it just seems like to the goals, it seems like a great opportunity, so.
Yes, thank you. And I think stacking is a great word for it because the TIF district really is focused on supporting and nurturing services directly to residents. The TIF district is supporting through the grant program tenant improvement grants for eating and drinking establishments, for in the Tiger Triangle specifically, personal services as well as retail. None of those are eligible in an enterprise zone. So what we're talking about enterprise zone is our manufacturers, is our large corporations. We're talking about Fott Steel, we're talking about Gerber, we're talking about whoever our new tenant is that is going to come in and hopefully come into the over 120,000 square feet of space in 2 buildings that Leafs Auto Shop just vacated and is back on the market. So even though the zones geographically might overlay, the eligibility and the participation are not in competition with each other at all. And as far as the growth, the job growth, we see that Agilix has, through the duration of their participation, increased 23 jobs, which is great. They're still in operation in Tigard. They just happen to shut down, what we all know them for, which is the styrofoam styrofoam recycling. So they're still operating, and they're still a qualifying participant in all other means.
Councillor Gadusi?
Thank you. If we were to let the current zone expire, has there been consideration of what the new zone would look like if we were to pursue redesignation?
Yes, thank you. The new zone would look to, well, whether we let the zone expire and pursue a new zone separately, or we move to redesignate and then move to amend our zone in a future year. What we're really looking to do is do an analysis of the entire city of Tigard and identify any potential area that would have eligible industry that could participate. We know we're missing, the other side of Tigard Street. Things like that, even if there's 1 or 2 businesses right now, they're not eligible just because they happen to have a street address on the other side of the street. So we know there's issues with our zone size or with our actual geographical boundary. So either way, we would look to perform a tax lot by tax lot analysis of what is realistic, what makes the most sense. As Brendan shared with us, we're not in any danger of overextending our zone and providing a more generous zone boundary, because again, the eligibility within the zone is going to be so specific that even if you're included in the zone doesn't mean you might be an eligible participant. Our challenge is going to be inadvertently missing somebody. So we want to be very intentional and methodical with what we recommend as the new zone boundary, because we do want to make it as accessible as possible.
Councillor Shaw?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much for the presentation. And as we added that goal of economic development, which I think will be key as we move forward. And we also talked about putting a strategic plan in place with thoughtful growth for economic development, 3, 7, 10-year plan. Given that, it seems to me that it would make sense to have a new zone boundary and to let this one expire. Would you agree with that?
I do agree we need to address the discrepancy in our current zone and what would be the ideal future zone. How we get there, there's multiple different options. It's not going to be a short process to do the work correctly to identify the new zone. And one of the challenges is what if we don't qualify by the time we're ready to identify that new zone? And that is my only concern about waiting and letting our current zone expire and pursuing a new zone when we're ready. Because as we mentioned, we're already in the tier of the ORS that will allow us to be compared to the metropolitan statistical area. And we are really close on the 2 qualifying factors that we have right now, which is a great problem to have, right? I'm not saying anything bad about the problem of we don't qualify under the economic hardship, but that is a consideration for the time base. The other side of that is that as soon as we either redesignate or pursue a new zone, that time clock does start over, and it's a 10-year process. So we would hit, if we pursue a redesignation and it takes us another year to renegotiate the boundary, it might only be 8 or 9 years of eligibility for those organizations that we intend to include. If we wait and it takes us a year or two to get to a new zone, we might miss out on a year or two of participation from somebody within the current zone.
Councillor Hu?
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of questions, a lot of thoughts. I appreciate Councillor Shaw bringing up the need to have an overall economic development plan, comprehensive plan. I guess my first concern is that when Brendan presented the growth chart, he said that this is not the perfect comparison because, you know, we are not comparing apple to apple. So for me, this but-for test is difficult to swallow because I'm not sure if it's those job growth is really contributed to the enterprise zone. And I think your memo also mentioned that it's not clear if the job growth is due to the zone or is it because post-pandemic hiring spree. So for me, that's a concern. And also, you mentioned that if we let the zone expire and then later on we designate a new zone, we may not be eligible for it anymore. So maybe that's a good thing because if we are now eligible for it, why do we go for it? I feel like we're gaming the system by trying to do it right now and then see what happens later. So, and also in the memo, if we are able to want to redesignate it, there are like 7 or 9 bullet points. So my concern is that if we do that 9 bullet points, do we have enough staff time to still devote to the comprehensive economic development plan? I don't know the staff bandwidth at this point. So, and also, is that really, the staff report says that will cost $700. Is that really how much it will cost to do that 9 step for the rezoning? What's that $700? What is that going to cover?
All right, so if we move forward, I'm going to answer your questions in reverse order because that's how I'm going to remember them. If we pursue redesignation, a lot of the steps are procedural. They don't actually take a lot of intentional or intense interaction. The $700 is the contracted amount that we already have worked into our agreement with Johnson Economics to help us with the required 21-day notification of public hearing for zone redesignation. So that's what the $700 is, and that's already built into our contract. I have that in my budget for this current fiscal year. So that's where the $700 is. As far as time, the procedural, the complexity of the procedural steps is really in the timing of everything. So we have between now and the end of June to complete the process. If we move forward, we're already poised to start the notifications by the end of this week. It is something that we looked at, especially with our delay in coming to council. We were originally scheduled for 2 weeks ago. So we have already built into our schedule that this is work that we may need to quickly shift and support. As far as staff bandwidth, it's really the notification and making sure we get all of those letters out, and we do have Brendan and Johnson Economics on board to help us with that. We do have time reserved in June to come back to council in case that's the direction, so we're already on the schedule. And we do, as I mentioned, we started working with our partners at Business Oregon back in February already. So our partners at Business Oregon and Port of Portland know that this is potentially coming and are ready to help us. So I'm not worried about capacity. It'll be quick, but a straight redesignation is doable in the time frame that we have left. As far as the potential for eligibility or non-eligibility, I don't believe that it would be that it is considered gaming the system if we know we're close, because that means our region is doing well. But that also means that just by the nature of the timing, we are no longer part of the region that supports enterprise zones, and that does give a competitive advantage to all of our neighboring jurisdictions who are midway through their zones. Those indicators are constantly changing. We might see in a year from now that all of a sudden our area has taken a huge economic hit, and all of our census data is showing exact opposite, and we might qualify under statewide. There's no way to really predict what the future metrics are going to tell us. So really it is a numbers game, but it's making sure that we're staying within the boundaries and operating with what's legally allowable for the zone designations. As far as the consideration for the job growth, I think I aged Brendan about 10 years when I started peppering him with that same question of how do we know that 410 jobs are actually created through the enterprise zone? And he was quite frank in saying we don't. But what we do know is that those 410 jobs were created under the First Source hiring agreement in coordination with WorkSource Oregon, and they're jobs that have been kept. So hard to say exactly the apples for apples because we don't have that. But we also don't have granular data by industry, by something as jurisdictionally small as the city of Tigard. So we can only go off of the closest comparable statistical area, which is Washington County. And we all know that 2020 threw a wrench in everything. So how much of that job growth is because of the number of jobs that were lost in 2020? We don't know. Right, but the industry as a whole experienced that. So even our participating companies that started after 2020, just because they started smaller doesn't mean they didn't still work through the program and create those jobs.
And I forgot to ask about the, oh great, I'm drawing a blank now. Oh, so you mentioned that Tigard is landlocked, which we agree. So this kind of enterprise zone is more suitable for cities or regions that have land to develop. And for the enterprise zone to be effective in city, like our landlocked city, pretty much will rely on company reinvest in equipment, right? And so you mentioned that if we don't do this, you worry about next year or two we have missed opportunities. Do you know personally how many companies are ready to invest in more equipment in the next couple of years if we don't have this enterprise zone renewal?
Oh, if I had a magic 8-ball, it'd be amazing. What we know is that companies are struggling to make the decision to invest in capacity right now. This would be one more avenue of incentivizing that capital investment and the commitment to growth, even during economic hardship and downturn. We also know that turnover in our industrial zone is extremely rare, and we have space newly available that we are very interested in finding a really strong partner to come in and set up and invest in being here in Tigard. So there are a couple short-term opportunities that we're really looking at. Would be unfortunate to miss out on. As far as the longer term incentive, all we can continue to do is work with the companies that are here in Tigard and try to get to the root of what the challenges are. And it may be that 95% of the companies don't ever even look at an enterprise zone, but for the 5% that do, it could be the difference maker in saying, yes, I will invest in this or not. One of the other challenges that we have in our industrial zone is it's a little bit older. A lot of the companies that are there started when land was available and space was available. So efficiencies weren't built into the design of how they even operate their facilities. So we're looking at those capital improvements to increase efficiency, to increase job density, to increase the utilization of the limited space available.
My questions. Turns out they weren't already asked. We know that there's like the 410 jobs over the 10 years, but I didn't see, and we know by, which business, but I was actually looking for, were they evenly created over the 10 years? Was there a bulk in the beginning and like a hole in the pandemic and a bulk in the end? Like where on the 10 years was that focus of job creation?
About 2/3 was in the beginning. We saw a lot of program participation in the 2016, 17, 18 era. We originally had provisions for a 4th and 5th year participation in an enterprise zone, which come with significantly more challenging reporting requirements. And after multiple companies failed to meet the reporting requirements of years 4 and 5, it was decided that we would just not support a 4 or 5 year zone and went back to just straight a 3-year. So we saw a lot of participation in the first several years of the program. And then, as Brendan mentioned, we've had a couple of duplicate participants. So 4 companies have participated since COVID, 2 of those being a repeat.
And for those companies that participated post-COVID, is anyone at risk of losing their 3-year benefits in the expiration of the zone? Like maybe they're in the middle of it? Is that a possibility?
Not at all. So anybody that is in the program while the zone in place is grandfathered in, and the state and county will recognize the benefits afforded to them throughout the duration of their 3-year contract, as long as they continue to meet the growth and reporting requirements. So whether we let the zone expire or we redesignate, none of the current participants are at jeopardy in years 2 or 3.
Thank you. That's helpful to know. If we were to look at, citywide and those sorts of things, knowing River Terrace 2.0 is coming and some of it is intending to be business spaces, is there a possibility of having land out there, or is it really just truly industrial and odds are no one's going to be able to take advantage of it out on the west side of Tigard?
Based on what I've heard about the intended use of the commercial districts in River Terrace 2.0, they would be similar to Washington Square. They would be direct to local retail, personal services, and would not be eligible, no.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. I think, thank you for answering everyone's questions and listening to the questions and the answers. And I don't think we have a magic 8 ball of what is going to happen, but listening to the concerns of businesses and the general uncertainty over the way that they feel about what they're able to do, continuing the enterprise zone for me feels like the right thing to do, to be able to continue to provide an opportunity to have some help in creating jobs that are important, especially as we talk about, we want you to live, work, and play in Tigard. And in order for that to happen, we know that, it is expensive to live here, and we need those 200 plus minimum wage jobs. And if this is a mechanism that helps those individuals say, I can pencil it out and figure it out because these 3 years, we get a bit of a tax break, I think that that's an incredible partnership that we can have with our businesses. I do absolutely agree that we probably need to relook at it all, but understanding that going and continuing the zone and maybe reaching out to everybody to remind everybody or say, hey, this is up again, and then having a focus and saying, now a little bit more, where can this go, to me is the best path forward. So I am in favor of giving the direction to renew the zone as is without Lake Oswego, and then my voice tonight, I am talking too much, and then to look at it and have an analysis, and if it warrants it, figuring out where those boundaries are. So that is that. I saw some head nodding. So maybe do we want to give some hands just if that is an agreed path forward? Or Councilor Scheich, do you have something to say?
I'm going to say we have a motion to make, and I'd be happy to move to pursue redesignation of the zone as is, less the Lake Oswego portion.
I'll second that.
Well, thank you for moving ahead. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the recommendation? Yeah, Council President.
Quick clarification, because it's been defined that Washington Square doesn't fit the model because of retail, but it moves forward, and then as Brandon said, it's later possibly dropped off. That's how it works. Okay, I just wanted the mechanics.
Affirmative. And I also want to reaffirm that Lake Oswego specifically asked to be excluded from the redesignation. It's not because of a qualification or working across jurisdictions. They have made that decision.
Excellent. Councillor Hugh?
Thank you, Mayor. And I had reservation about option 2, but thanks to Danielle, she answered all my questions. So now I support option 2.
Councillor Gadusi?
How long would the redesignation be for?
10 years.
Mayor, I agree with your assessment of option 2. Obviously, I made the motion for it, but I think thinking about our council goals and specifically elevating economic opportunities, this seems like a very clear signal that we can send pretty quickly after designating that goal that we want to elevate economic opportunities. And thank you, Danelle and Sambo, for your contributions, and Brandon as well for helping put all this information together.
Yeah, I think really using every tool in our toolbox and stacking it in such a way that maybe if you don't qualify for this benefit, we're certainly working on this over here for you, I think is a great message to send our businesses. Any additional? Seeing none. All of those in favor of the motion to move to pursue redesignation in the zone as is, less the Lake Oswego portion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. The motion is adopted by a 6-1 vote of the Tigard City Council. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. We'll see you in June.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Brandon. We will move on to our food cart discussion, and welcome back, Community Development Director Kirkman. And it looks like we also have Assistant Community Development Director Warren. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Lube and members of the council. My name is Skylar Warren, Assistant Director of Community Development, and I'm here tonight to provide the council with a follow-up briefing on the food cart regulations that were adopted in January, as well as to hear feedback from the council on those regulations and the program moving forward. As the council knows, we've received a lot of feedback on these regulations, and our team has worked hard to provide opportunities for community feedback, as well as providing assistance to potential new food cart owners to permit their operations. Before I get into the discussion of where we are, though, I do want to take a step back and discuss the city's history regarding food carts. Next slide. So, food carts in the modern sense are restaurant. At the beginning of the 2000s, these uses were generally pretty limited, appearing primarily in the downtown core of large cities. This began to change after the Great Recession in 2008, when there was renewed interest in this lower cost model for restaurants, and food cart operations began to spring up in vacant lots around the metro area, still primarily confined to Portland. Tigard began to see some sporadic interest in food carts in the mid-2010s. At that point, the assumption was that interest in food carts would be limited to a cart or two on existing properties. So as such, the community development staff at that time made the determination that carts could be accommodated under the existing code, provided that they met certain requirements, including those that applied to other types of development. So you can see here in the dark green column on the left some of the requirements that were applied to food carts. This is not all of them, but it gives you an idea of what was in place. After the pandemic, interest in food carts increased significantly, particularly in standalone food cart pods that were not associated with another primary use on the site. Recognizing that there was also a need to offer a process that would grant a land use entitlement to carts and pods, the community development team worked to develop standards and procedures to regulate food carts as part of the Tigard MADE Code. These changes went into effect on May 23, 2024, and any carts established after this date require a land use approval. Most of the regulations were carried over from the previous policy approach, and you can see some examples of those standards and requirements in the middle column here. So while the goals behind these changes were to aid food cart businesses, as the department began to field inquiries from prospective operators, it became clear that the code was insufficient and applied more standards to food cart operations than was intended. In addition, the process involved to approve a food cart was more burdensome than intended. Seeing that there was a need to correct these deficiencies in the code, the team worked quickly to research best practices in our peer communities in the region. The result was a proposal for a new food cart chapter that would consolidate standards from across the code into one location, provide direction regarding requirements from partner agencies, and reduce the procedural burden on food cart applicants. In addition, rather than apply the standards required of other development, a small number of additional requirements were added to ensure that food cart operations met the goals of the city's comprehensive plan and strategic plan. One of the major issues this code was intended to address was the city's own requirements to meet the standards of clean water services and to protect sanitary system infrastructure. The council was presented these code amendments on January 28th, and they were adopted. Part of the reason I'm running through this history is that I want to make sure that the council as well as the public are aware that most of the regulations in place are not new, that there is a thread running back more than a decade regarding the city's regulation of these operations. The council was provided with a memo that is in your packet that goes through each of the standards in the food cart chapter one by one, details when those standards were put into place, and gives the reasoning behind each one. Next slide. So since the adoption of the new rules, the community development team has given significant resources over to assisting food cart entrepreneurs with establishing new businesses, as well as registering any legal non-conforming carts already in existence. Given the interest from some food cart entrepreneurs in discussing the details of the rules, the community development team scheduled an open house on April 24th to provide full background on what was needed to operate a food cart in the city, as well as to gather feedback and comments from the public. Invitations went out to food cart entrepreneurs, the Tigard Downtown Alliance, and the Tigard Chamber of Commerce. Next slide. So in the first part of the meeting, we provided a step-by-step need-to-know rundown of what it takes to get a food cart business started in the city. We had a panel consisting of our assistant director, me, our building official, and our economic development team. And then we were also joined by our partners at the Washington County Health Department. And you can see here an example of the kinds of information that we provided. Next slide. So one of the elements that we provided information on was system development charges that apply to carts. The calculation that you see here is based on the one that's applied in the city of Beaverton. And this was the consensus approach for community development, public works, and finance teams. Next slide. So the next few slides, I'm going to run through some of the feedback and questions that we received in that meeting on April 24th. First off, we had some questions about SDC's system development charges, particularly how rates are set and who is responsible for paying. So we provided information about system development charges, what they fund and why they are applied to new development, and how the city arrived at the fees for transportation and parks SDCs. We also provided information about water and sewer SDCs and how those are applied in instances where there are new water meters or sanitary sewer connections. The question of responsibility ultimately comes down to a negotiation between a food cart owner and the property owner where they are located. Ultimately, the applicant is the one responsible for paying fees, but private parties could work to distribute those fees however they like. We also had some comments about the challenges of working through Oregon Department of Transportation requirements. We shared that these same requirements apply to all development adjacent to ODOT facilities and that they also apply across all jurisdictions. We also try to help applicants and customers work through ODOT requirements, but ultimately we do not have control over what they mandate. Next slide. We had a question about how the food cart pod threshold works when there are multiple properties. We explained that generally the food cart pod threshold applies on a per property basis, although there are some instances where the code considers adjacent properties under the same ownership as a single property. We encourage potential applicants to reach out about the specifics of their site. We received also questions about the January code update. The first was a question about why more people were not notified. And while in community development, we always strive to make sure that we've reached as many stakeholders as possible. We recognize that there is always room for improvement. In this case, we worked to engage directly with those potential food cart operators who had been stuck in the previous code without a streamlined path forward. We also offered interim measures to those food cart entrepreneurs to help them establish or expand their operations under the MADE code while they waited for the new code amendments. There were 3 food cart entrepreneurs of which the city was aware. Of those 3, 1 opted to sit down with our team and review the proposed code line by line. There was a 4th potential operator that the team was not aware of at the time, as the only permit related to that operation had been canceled, and our planning staff had not received any inquiries about adding a food cart pod to that site. Another question related to the city's adoption of the code by emergency ordinance. This was done to address the ongoing issues related to the management of fats, oils, and grease at existing carts, which the city manages through the permitting process, as well as to offer waiting food cart entrepreneurs an opportunity to move ahead with their stalled developments. Next slide. There were questions about the current code. The first was whether the city could provide an exemption from the current regulations. The team shared that the city was required to equitably apply the law to everyone and cannot grant exemptions. The other question related to the restroom requirements for food cart pods. Given that a food cart pod consists of at least 4 carts, the restroom requirements are a matter of protecting public health, safety, and welfare. Restrooms with hot running water are a requirement of the Washington County Health Department as well. Given that most food cart pods will locate on properties with existing buildings, the team believes that providing access to permanent restroom facilities is a reasonable requirement. There were questions about the legislative process. One question was whether the council had the option to change the code in one meeting. The team shared that legislative updates to the development code are governed by state law and require minimum amounts of time that are built into the process. In addition, further engagement is required anytime there are proposed changes, and this means that the likely fastest code changes would take around 6 months. We also received a question about whether our team was willing to meet, and we shared that we are always willing to meet and to assist in any way that we can. Our counter team has provided exceptional customer service to those interested in food carts, and our leadership has met multiple times with food cart entrepreneurs and provided detailed and timely responses to questions. Next slide. Finally, there were some concerns about specific provisions in the code. One concern related to the prohibition on locating over easements. This is not really a new standard as it applies to access easements. It was included in the code language to make that requirement more clear. The city has always prohibited even temporary uses from locating over these easements. The prohibition on locating over utility easements was a requested addition from the city's Public Works Department to ensure that their team has adequate access to infrastructure in an emergency situation. While typically vehicles located over easements are not a concern, as they can be towed out of place, food carts are less mobile due to their semi-permanent nature. Disconnecting gas, water, power, and sanitary lines creates risk and liability for the city, as well as the team not really knowing the contents of the cart that they're moving. The other concern related to fats, oils, and grease management, and the commenter shared that they did not believe all carts produce FOG. The team shared that FOG requirements apply to all food service operations regardless of the amount of FOG they may produce, and these requirements are part of Clean Water Services' National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit with the federal government. The requirement is included in the code because it is a requirement of the city for food service operations. Next slide. So that concludes our presentation, and at this time we're happy to take any questions that the council may have and help the council with a discussion of the food cart code.
Thank you. Questions? Councilor Robbins?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Skylar and Sambo, for being here. I did attend the meeting just to observe and see what happened. Lots of people came. I think you guys handled it admirably, answering all the questions. It seemed very organized. It was nice to have the Washington County Health Department there, as well as the other partners and our economic development gentleman, his director, manager, I'm sorry, who kind of moderated everything.
Project manager.
Yeah, it was good. And I thought it opened up a good conversation with everyone. Not everyone was happy. If everyone was happy, we wouldn't still be talking about this, right? But I think you guys I just want to thank you for being so patient and kind to everyone and being open to answering all the questions.
Council President?
Thank you, Mayor. I too want to just thank everyone for the level of detail and information that we've been provided, and then also access to view the meeting, which I did as well. So a couple things, because these have been, and Skylar, thank you for reviewing them, so I'm going to circle back on two pieces. So just to reiterate on the easements, as you went through the progression of the code, that has always been in place because you were required to be on hard surface, correct? So if a cart was put somewhere else, that's nothing new because you were supposed to start on a hard surface. Does that make sense? What I'm
Yes,
saying?
the requirement for locating on a hard surface has been in place since the city first started allowing food carts.
Okay. And then my second question, as I listened today on the fog concerns, the only other option is that was it 20-pound bucket, but that wouldn't work in a pod, correct? Because of the whole system that is required. So even if you have one cart out of 4 that isn't actively using that still doesn't apply because now you've created a system of carts, which then requires a broader fog capture. Does that make sense?
Yes, so the provisions change once you move into the food cart pod threshold. So for individual carts, those that, 1 to 3 carts on a single site,
yeah.
They can manage fog either. They could use a system that is connected to a permanent sewer. They can dump into that sewer as long as the material is treated first with a grease separator and that is maintained. That's the other important part of that,
sure.
is the maintenance of those systems is important. Once you move into a pod 4 or more, we do require a centralized fog management system, and it's because of the exponential risk that the city faces as more carts are utilizing the site and also potentially impacting the sanitary sewer system. I don't have data about how many folks are actually using the totes and actually taking them to the Durham plant and dumping them. I would imagine it's actually fairly low compared to those who would choose to use a grease separator and actually treat it on site. And certainly for more information about the fog stuff, I would definitely lean on our public works peers.
Okay.
Can I actually?
That's fine. I just wanted to follow up. Can you talk a little bit about why fog management is so important and what it is? Because I think we talk about fats, oil, and greases, and we have become really well-versed in everything food cart, but I think perhaps some of the public have no idea what we're talking about and why it's important not just to dump into our systems.
Sure, but just to follow up with Council President Wolf's comment, I'd point out that the decision to make the delineation between food carts and food cart pods was one that was made with the acknowledgement that there is a threshold in which we want to acknowledge that there needs to be additional amenities that are provided with the investments that are being placed and the intensity associated with it. So as we looked and explored the use of pods versus carts, that was one of the components we felt was necessary, is that food pods were intended to provide more amenities and the opportunities to be a significant use as compared to more of the temporary nature of food carts themselves. And I'll let Skylar decide how he wants to respond to the fats, oils, grease.
How to talk about this without it being gross, right? So you can think of the sanitary system as sort of like your circulatory system, I suppose, right? You have liquid that needs to move through it, just like your body. And just like if you ingest too much fats, oils, and grease, your circulatory system will become eventually clogged, right? And that's what happens in the sanitary system, is that these materials collect on the walls of the sanitary pipes. They accrete over time. I'm sure you've heard reports of some cities with larger sanitary systems where they have something they call fatbergs, and it's these large accumulations of fats, oils, and grease that actually cause sanitary overflows. So it is incredibly important because when the sanitary system becomes clogged, what overflows from that is untreated sewage, and that is a significant risk to public health, safety, and welfare. And those have to be reported, right? That because it's a health risk, right? And I don't remember all of the agencies that is reported to, but it is a pretty big deal when you have a sanitary overflow like that. So the idea behind keeping fats, oils, and grease out of those pipes is to ensure that they can continue to move the things that need to move down the system to the treatment plant unimpeded.
Because I have to add to more conversations about fog. Keep in mind that households actually create fog. But the reason we have the fog management systems for commercial areas is because of the intensity of the use. So while some may believe that there isn't any fog being produced by food carts, there is generally acknowledgement that commercial uses like that have a higher likelihood of creating those various fog bergs as we've mentioned.
Do you have a follow-up question? Okay, Councilor Robbins?
Just to add to that, if per se a food pod developer had 4 spaces but said, but one of my potential carts who's going to come in doesn't make any fog, vegan cart with nothing, why do I have to pay for that fog? The answer, I'm guessing, is because that vegan cart that doesn't make any fats, oils, or grease could leave and a new one come in, and it has to be set up that way so that everyone can follow uniform rules to protect our pipes and protect the environment. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say that the instance of any food service operation generating zero fog is likely nil, right? Whether it's vegan or whatever the cuisine would be. Fats, oils, and grease are in everything that we eat. You know, crackers have fat in them, right? So as that stuff gets into the system and it breaks down, the fats, oils, and grease will actually separate from the other food materials, and they will become suspended in the water because the oils float, and then those will accumulate on the wall. So it doesn't take a lot, and it's really the impact over time as it continues to accrete.
Is this standard for the area? Say Beaverton also requires fog management, and Lake Oswego and Gresham also require this, so or are we being extra strict?
This is a requirement not just in Beaverton, Washington County, the metro area, Portland, Oregon. This is a requirement that is increasingly in place across the U.S. because so many cities are subject to those NPDES permits, and also because they have to maintain their infrastructure in a functional manner without having to go clean out the pipes to maintain that function.
Councilor Hu?
Thank you, Mayor. Oh. Some AI going on there. Well, like my colleague, I would like to thank you for having the meeting. I also watched the hour and 40-minute YouTube video, and not, actually a lot of people there were actually, I can sense the aha moment. They were relieved, especially when some of them knew that they don't have to pay the SDC because they were grandfathered in. So, and some of them actually knew the pathway forward. So that was actually a very helpful meeting, in my opinion. And in terms of the feedback received, I was laser focused on concern about specific provisions, because if we don't know, what's wrong specifically or what they think is wrong, there's no way we know how to fix them. And the two examples you provided, we just talked about locational easement. I agree with you. The whole reason we have access easements so we can move around, move through it. So it doesn't make sense for a path to be there. And for utility, safety, I totally agree. And for fog, enough say, I don't want to get into that. So yeah, at this point, I really don't see anything we need to change. But during our one-on-one sample back in January, I mentioned that I believe the City of Beaverton's code for their permanent bathroom, that they actually allow at adjacent property. But you mentioned that it's difficult to define what adjacent property is. But I don't see anybody asking for that code change at this moment. So I'm okay to leave that unchanged for now. But if there's a need for that, I'm willing to consider that further. But overall, I think I don't see any reason for change at this point. So thank you.
Yes, and Councilor Hu, part of the reason we're here now and having this conversation is to acknowledge that our codes are dynamic, and as we move further along and have the opportunity to inform our community as to what the expectations the city has for new carts, new pods in the area, we'll have the opportunity to take those feedback in and acknowledge what it is that we might need to modify. We currently right now do have standards such as our 5-foot spacings that we've acknowledged are helpful for our TVF&R in dealing with fire access. They may want it, they may ask that it's further away. We just won't know. And that is the amendment process in a nutshell, is being able to come back and make the modifications. But we need to be mindful that these modifications are ones that there's a process involved with it. And our hope is that through this whole last few months that we've had the opportunity to inform the community of our processes and the thought behind these standards that we've outlined.
Councilor Gadusi?
Thank you, Mayor. One thing real quick, in order to alleviate any sort of appearance of bias or conflict or anything like that, ex parte communication and all that fun stuff, I have been to some of the sites and talked to a lot of the parties before this discussion. One of the questions that did come up specifically was regarding the 2014 policy, talking about canopies, because the way that it's worded talks about it needing to be fully collapsible, and it seems like the intent is for temporary canopies, where some of them have like more permanent things, and there was a request for clarification on that specifically.
Yeah, the canopy requirement does date back to the 2014 policies. The goal with that was to ensure that the cart basically collapsed on itself at the end of operations, partially because canopies attached to a food cart are sort of temporary in nature by necessity, right? And that temporary nature it increases the risk associated with them. If a property owner wanted to build a permanent structure that the cart could use, that is, potentially allowable through this city's accessory structure provisions, right? It wouldn't necessarily have to be attached to the cart in order to serve the cart. So it's those canopies that are attached to carts that are the ones that must be put away at the end of the shift, so that wind throw, whatever, does not cause issues with it. But that's independent of something that might be a more permanent structure on the site that's been permitted.
also to follow up, food carts are mobile units, and for that reason, they are to be the canopies are supposed to be collapsible, and they are supposed to be set in a point where they are, in theory, are mobile. And that's a distinction I want to make, because the requirements for a mobile cart are different than what we would expect for an actual structure or building. And we want to be mindful that we are compliant with that as we move forward with allowing for more food carts in the area.
Yeah, to put a finer point on that, the moment something becomes permanently attached to the ground, it kicks everything attached to it into the building code. And the way that we allow food carts is by treating them as like it's a use that's in a vehicle, so it's kind of this special use case. So we try to keep them out of the building code by requiring those temporary connections for that purpose, because we don't want to have to apply the building code to these uses.
Sorry, for clarification, permanently attached to the cart, not to the ground, so like a steel can, but I understand. Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? I'm not hearing support at this point to change any of the existing code. Does anybody disagree with that assessment? Comfortable continuing to move forward with the code as is? Do you have your guidance that you need?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the Downtown Parking Management Program update. Community Development Director Kirkman, welcome back.
It's been such a long time. Can you introduce yourself too? My co-presenter.
Sean Farrelly, Redevelopment Manager.
All right. Downtown and Triangle Parking Management. Next slide. Wonderful. The presentation before you contains materials we provided during our April 3rd meeting to the business community to provide you some context to the comments provided in your material packets. The data, and here's kind of the agenda. The first 3 bullets really covers what we discussed during the action forum itself. However, the data collection provided tonight will be a bit more updated, as it includes April parking data as well. We'll report out on the comments from the forum, provide next steps, and finish with questions, feedback, or any additional direction the council would like to provide staff on this project. So, next slide. So again, these next few slides are ones you probably have seen, but I just, again, wanted you to get a flavor of what we presented to the businesses. This timeline here was provided to the group showing the modified plans to by the team to council that we proposed to council in February, showing our commitment to provide more data and an opportunity to educate the community before we begin the actual warning citation program. So next slide. This map here should look familiar, as it proposed the areas where we were going to obtain data, and an opportunity to reaffirm where the data collection areas would be, as well as the new times for the time-restricted areas in both districts. Next slide. Here we introduce to the group the City Center, which is Tigard's Parking Ambassadors, and their role. They were collecting data for us right now. They aren't contacting the actual vehicles or the drivers. They're there 5 days a week, 40 hours of data collection, and the schedules are alternating between Monday through Friday and Tuesday through Saturday. The Tuesday through Saturday weeks, they are actually picking up the evening hours to 6 p.m. So capturing the evening data that was requested by some of the business owners as well. Next slide. With the data collection, there were over 30 parking zones that we created to be able to capture various different analysis that we wanted to do in the future. It was easier for us to create the zones. So this here is
the area for the Tiger Triangle. There are actually 6 zones provided that they are capturing the data. The green areas are the current time-restricted areas, and purple were the non-restricted, time-restricted areas that we had been asked to study as well. Next slide. For the downtown area, you can see there, we actually ended up dividing it up into 27 parking zones created for downtown. I'll briefly go over 8 of the consolidated collection areas just to give you an idea of how we're identifying the information to our businesses. Next slide. I'll go through these ones real quick, but this one here is Main Street. The collection area is from the tracks to Scoffins, and the purple there is the on-street parking that we counted as that is not time restricted. Next slide. This is Middle Main Street. It covers basically from the tracks to Burnham and includes Tigard as well, Tigard Avenue, and also shows where the one of the 2 public parking lots are located. Next slide. And of course, Main Street South, which covers the remainder of Main Street. Next slide. 2 of the collection areas are Upper Burnham and Lower Burnham, with Ash Street being the divider between the 2, and the second parking lot area that the city maintains. Next slide. This is the Ash Avenue area, which we wanted to capture to see the impacts of the dog park as well as the residential area to the north, south, west. Directionally challenged today for some reason. Next slide. And the next one is the commercial street and the 2 areas, which is Upper Commercial, which pulls the data from the area north of the transit center, and of course the Lower Commercial area. Next slide. And here is kind of an example of our data collection area. Were you covering this or am I?
Yeah, so to talk about the data, actually should update this slide. We got a new data drop last week from April, so we were able to pull out some highlights of that. But this is just to show you how much data we're getting. Previous data, downtown parking studies, we chose 2 days, and now we've done 40 days of data collection so far. I'd say we still need to get some more evening data, because we originally, for the first couple weeks, we're only collecting data up to about 4:30. So now we are we're capturing that evening hour, and we'll be able to make more judgments as we go along. Next slide, please. So again, this is since we just got the April data last week, we weren't able to do a full analysis, but I pulled out some of the highlights. Looked like the highest recorded utilization was on a Saturday, 5:30 to 6. And that time 64% of downtown on-street spaces were used. So that means there's still 97 on-street spaces that are available. South of the tracks, Main Street, much more heavily used. That is true. Can often get up to 80%. Less usage north of the tracks on Main Street. City's 2 public parking lots are highly utilized. A lot of times they're up to 80%, depending on the time. So far, what we've collected is pretty consistent with those point-in-time studies that we did a couple years back. Next slide. So we are collecting triangle data now, which is new. We hadn't done the parking study a couple years ago. We didn't cover the triangle. But this time we are. This is still just looking at March-only data, but really high utilization at Dartmouth and 72nd. On Saturday evening hour, it was up to 86% being used. Looking at the Hermoso-Bevelin loop, which is kind of the Hermoso and Bevelin that connect in a loop. We don't have time limits right now on those, but we're taking a look. We wanted to monitor them to see if there's any impacts from a recent mixed-use building that was built on Hermoso. So we're monitoring that. Looks like right now about peak utilization is about 60%. Next slide. So with time overstays, we did get a full report from April, and looking at the downtown, the average for the month was 21.5 vehicles a day. So that's an average violation rate of 10%, since there's 214 time-limited spaces. Tiger Triangle, much smaller number of time-limited spaces, only 36. There we see a 33% average violation rate, so that's 11.8 a day. A large majority of these are significant overstays, 4+ hours, so not someone going over 10 minutes. They are fairly long overstays, often for the entire day that data was collected. Our parking advisors have said that in an area where there's regular enforcement, they would expect the violation rate to be about 5 to 9%. So we're over that in both areas, although just slightly in the downtown. Next slide, please. So this is looking at a full month of information, and these are this is showing unique vehicles, so individual vehicles that were exceeding time limits for at least 2 days. So not counting the 1 day parking violators. So as you see, there are quite a number. We're overstaying for 2 days. It does drop off a bit after that, as you can see. So that's just showing kind of the, how many vehicles we're talking about. And again, if, more enforcement would probably reduce that number as people change behavior. Next slide, please. Where the time overstays are staying in downtown, it's mainly on Ash Avenue, Upper Burnham, and Main Street, the south of Faneuil Creek area, and then Triangle, 72nd and Dartmouth. Next slide.
So that is the data that we collected. We, again, showed the data to those that attended the forum for the first month of March itself. And, the meeting was held on April 3rd. We gave the updates to the program and introduced the data that was provided. 17 people attended the meeting. The meeting summaries were distributed to the attendees and others who were part of the mailing database, and summary comments were collected and provided council in your packets. So you were able to see not only what we summarized, but also any follow-up comments that we received, which was about, I believe, 5 or 6. It was some of the key themes that we got out of the meetings was that we did receive positive feedback on the data collection. We are currently doing, and that we plan to do as well, so they seem to be very receptive to that. Parking lots impact on the parking enforcement program and the impacts on parking lots was one of the areas that did get brought up. And also understanding a clear picture of what the short-term and long-term strategies for parking in the downtown area was. Discussions on parking structure, parking lots still continue. Spectrum of opinions on the need for enforcement was there. I mean, I still don't think we have a consistent answer as to what the thought is on the need for the enforcement, and as well as what the role city should play in related to helping with the parking enforcement. The additional comments were expanding communication now outside of the business community. We've had 2 parking forums now, and and some of the comments made were, well, should we be looking at the community's thoughts on the time restrictions and the parking enforcement, as well as how do the residences as well, what are the impacts to the residences as well. And lastly, costs associated with the parking program itself got brought up as well. So those were kind of some key comments that we received. Next slide. it brings us to what our next steps are. As we've shown the timeline, the next phase for this month as well as June is to look at the notification and education. So we're looking, hearing from the businesses as well as thinking about how we want to start notification. We're looking at expanding the conversation to not only our businesses but the residences in that area. We're looking to do another parking forum in June, but again, open to businesses and residences in the area. And one of the asks that the businesses had were, how does our community see the impacts as shoppers or those that are frequenting these businesses? So we had discussed looking at a survey to the community, maybe through the businesses, providing QR codes or some sort of survey methodology in which they can provide to the community members, as well as putting it out on our webpage and social media. And again, continuing to collect data. We are also currently looking at TriMet passes that we've received through a grant to allow us to start talking about encouraging more trans use in the area. So we are looking at setting up a free pass program to allow introductions to utilizing our TriMet services and our transit center downtown. So next slide. So again, to expand on our next steps, we are looking at notifications through May and June, the tentative parking forum in June, as well as another council update on June 17th. I will probably ask the council if they're still comfortable with that or if they would like us to push that further out. And again, warning citations start July through August, and the START enforcement program is still targeted for September 1st. So with that, I will conclude our presentation and really hope to take your questions and comments.
Thank you. Feels like just yesterday we were talking about doing this. Any questions or comments? Yeah, Councilor Schleck?
Thank you. I just want to take this opportunity to thank both of you for your long-term work on this, on the parking situation. And it's really awesome to now have this data over a prolonged period of time. I know we had a number of data gathering sort of point in time counts, and it's really great to see this data over time so we can make a more accurate assessment of the situation and what the appropriate measures may be as far as parking management goes. As far as the next phase, you know, May, June being continued data gathering, notification, and education, and not warning citations and so on, I'm comfortable proceeding with that information gathering and further education. And I would definitely like to have that conversation around June for sort of a final go, no-go about whether we want to continue proceeding, especially knowing that we're going to start hitting some of the nicer weather months, and that I think will have an impact on some of the data that we see there. So I'm comfortable proceeding with further notification, education, and data collection for the next 2 months.
Councilor Shaw?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much for a presentation and to applaud acquiring all this data. I think it's very helpful, and both your probably now expertise in parking that you have. A question with regards to the next steps. You mentioned the May-June education phase and that a mailer will go to businesses and residents. You said just residents in the area? And curious about that because I think it's more residents who would come from a little further afar to go down into town that may also be interested in this. So that's my first question. And then the second, I'm still very concerned about the timing of a potential enforcement of September 1, because if you look at the, typically July, August is vacation, people go away, and if they come back and hadn't been informed during that time frame, I would like to see that pushed back at least a month so it coincides with people not being gone, but that would be my preference.
Okay, I think you're asking about the mailers. The thought is that we wanted to, the education component of it is time-restricted parking hasn't been enforced, and so the residences that we're hoping to capture are those that are most likely impacted by the time restrictions. Would be those that are adjacent to these areas. We're happy to open it up to others in the community, but you know, again, it's one of those where we will likely put it as a social media a social media blast to say there's a conversation on parking enforcement that we can send out. But I think our focus in our resources would be ensuring that we hit the actual residences that are going to actually be affected on a daily basis.
The reason I ask that is because oftentimes we have folks who go downtown and think, I want to combine both a hair appointment with a lunch with possibly getting dental work done or shopping for jewelry, and that can definitely be more than the time frame of parking. And so that's why I was curious if we're going to let other residents know that they may not want to bulk all their activities to go downtown in one day because it could end up with a violation. So that's why I think it could affect a broader community.
That was the point of our survey with the businesses. Well, that was one of the recommendations or comments that got brought up is why don't we look at providing some sort of survey or QR code that we can direct people to the parking website and to be able to ask the questions of the actual customers of the businesses. And our hope is that by providing that link, and again, my hope is that our businesses are willing to help participate in this, because I think one of the hard parts is when we've been looking at our forums and such, we have been averaging about 15, 20 folks that have participated. So it's a fraction of the actual businesses in the area. So our hope is to go out and say, here's a QR code for your customers that you think may be impacted. Please feel free to have them provide us with the survey and see what feedback we get. Because we have had, the concern I have is that we've made decisions based on what we are assuming is needed by the businesses in the area. And my hope is that as we keep moving further along, that we are getting more of the comments in and feedback. And so that's part of the education notification component.
I'm going to preface this by saying I haven't taken the survey, but I deeply hope that it is quick. Because I've gone to a lot of surveys lately, and I click to page 2 and I go to page 3 and I give up. And I'm just telling you, if you don't make it short and snappy and as brief as possible, we're not going to get participation. And everyone agreed with it. So I'm asking you, as someone who has been sent a lot of surveys lately, please don't do that.
We're thinking 4 questions at
perfect.
At
I can
best.
do 4 questions.
I really am hoping just to really to capture who's coming to our downtown area, what is their time limit, where are they parking, and what is the time frame that they are most comfortable with. That is pretty much all we're looking to answer. I think the data itself already answers some of the questions that you've asked, which is how are the employees parking the area? Well, if you look at the repeats, they're going to be, and the locations that they are. If they're on Ash Creek, then we're probably, a good assumption is that it is some of the residences are utilizing the on-street parking areas. So some of the data has provided the answers I think you have all asked so far. So this survey is really more of an informative and to be able to help the businesses get a sense of what seems to be a concern, which is it'll impact the users that are coming to their shops.
Great. Yeah, just 4 questions is excellent. Council President?
Yeah, the first one is just the slide. You guys, with all the data on 14 is yellow and green. I can't figure out, does that mean anything, or did that just break the lens there?
Could we back up to the slides? And I will be honest, we put that in there just to give context to the volume of data. This is basically is supposed to show you how often we go out there and the different zones that we created. There's literally there are over 30 zone areas that we created, and our City Center goes and frequently runs through each of those locations. So what we have offered to the businesses, as well as you all, if you'd like, is we're happy to send you the actual raw data. But it was just, oh wow, we look like we have a taker here. And we are working with our consultants to look at a better template for this. But the goal of this slide was to really show you that we have granular data, and we're trying to understand what the community wants as questions that they want answered. And that was one of the things we opened up, and we opened it up to the council as well. What is it that you would like us to capture in the data? We did hear from folks that, well, 2 hours is not, we don't know if 2 hours is not enough time. So we've asked for the overstays to look at the actual hours of the overstays. So as Sean was able to point out, a lot of that is 4+ or more hours. That tells you that, well, maybe 2 hours isn't a huge issue, and 2 hours is significant, is enough. We don't know. So that is why we're going to look at the length of time in which these overstays are at. So that was an ask during our forum, and one that we're trying to follow up with. And so happy to email you all the data, and happy to get whatever ideas of questions you want us to pull from the data we're collecting.
I think Councillor Schlack would like that tomorrow morning.
Careful what you wish for.
Yeah, don't tempt me with a good time.
Did you have additional questions? Go.
And so again, the data and the information and the feedback from businesses has been really helpful. So thank you truly for all the work you've done. So the only thing, I mean, as I read it, I kind of felt like, you know, we're very fortunate and we love that we could pull up and just go across the street to go where we want to go. But there really is parking available if you kind of plan and figure you're going to move with the mayor and walk a couple extra blocks. I think the biggest thing that still sits with me is if parking is constrained, what are those opportunities for employees that are getting off a shift, especially in the wintertime when it gets dark fast and they're parking, you know, down a ways. So it just is, I suppose, me sharing as we continue with this work, that's just a wondering, or, you know, something that weighs on me is as we do thoughtful work, how we accommodate for that. But again, appreciate the good work, and I think there's opportunity for people to park, so.
And I'd point out that we are concerned about safety of employees. It's a very fine balance between being able to provide the availability of spaces to what the businesses want, to what their employees want. Is there the potential for us to say, or for businesses to say, okay, we have to look at our model of how we allow our employees to utilize the parking that's available downtown? Does it mean that maybe they are parked there, the earlier employees are parking there close to the building and then having to move? That might have to be part of the conversation, is how are business operations for the businesses themselves? Because, you know, we have a finite number of spaces and different needs. Some of them are, you know, we heard from some businesses saying, we wish we had more loading zones where they could come out and drop their products and be able to go back to their cars. But if we create loading zones, that means that we affect, it's a domino effect. So we try very best to balance what the needs are, and part of the notification education is being able to talk about that and say, and my hope is that with more conversations with our businesses, to be, you know, frank, is there an impact to private lots? There possibly could be. But again, the lots will have to determine, the private lots will have to kind of determine how they want to handle the additional parking if there is an impact to it. And again, the reactions have been kind of across the board. Some are like, well, it's a good problem to have that we don't have enough parking spaces. That means we have people actually in our downtown areas. And some are like, well, this means my businesses aren't. So, you know, we look to you all to see how far you would like us to help in dealing with this possible problem in our downtown area and Tigard and the Triangle.
Councillor Hu?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I totally agree that it doesn't make sense for downtown businesses to want their employee park right in front of the store all day long and not allowing their customers to have the best parking available. So maybe what you said makes sense. And also will support having Councillor Schlack crunching the data a little bit, because right now on the slides that time overstays, it says in downtown is 10%, average violation rate of 10%, but Sean said that in an area that's actively patrolled, the violation rate could be up to 9%. So statistically speaking, to me, downtown as a whole already is doing pretty well just as if it's managed by parking enforcement. So, but maybe if we have a more specific data on which region of downtown, maybe it's higher than 10%, maybe that will help us, make a more informed decision going forward. Because I'm also thinking about the cost of the parking enforcement, right? It's like $100,000 a year. So if we are not really addressing a problem, if there isn't really a problem, and again I don't know, then why are we spending this money on parking enforcement? But at the Tiger Triangle area, I can see the violation is 33%, and I'm wondering if that's because Overland, the tenant at Overland is not, having enough parking space there. So again, I think I support having a more specific data of which, each region, is to see if there's really more than 10% or at any particular region. So.
Absolutely, and we're happy to provide you the information based on the zones. But I'm going to channel our finance director in this conversation, which is, yes, we do have the things that need to be considered as we get further along, and I guess the no-go conversation that sounds like Councilor Schlack would like to have in June, is that there is the cost involved with with having our private contractor there to do it, which we've identified as being about $110,000 a year. But there is an overhead cost involved as well, because if we start enforcement, that does mean that our courts will have an increase in use in that area as well. So if you're factoring in the potential overhead, that could be pretty excessive, or I shouldn't say excessive, but it will increase it by a significant amount, because we will probably need to have additional full-time employees to be able to capture the services that would be required for that as well. And we're happy to provide you with kind of some estimates on it at the time in June, if that's something that would be helpful in your determination.
Councilor Robbins?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you not only for this presentation with all the data, Jake, but also just with all the work that you guys are doing, putting into this, and the meetings you've held with the public and with business owners. I'm sure that's very stressful, so I appreciate that. One of my concerns is all the feedback that was included in the packet was, at least from my interpretation, business owners being unhappy with current parking standards, but also unhappy with the study and with any potential plans we might have. And so I'm wondering, what is the right solution? Because we're doing this study and we're trying to think of a way to improve it, but our idea of what we're thinking might improve it, everyone who's commented, it sounds like, is saying that that's a terrible idea, they don't like that idea. That doesn't mean it's not the right idea, but that does give me pause as far as what to do. I've worked in restaurants in the past, and we were never allowed to park up close. We always had to park far away. I work at the hospital now, and no one's allowed to park. They're actively harassing employees who are parking in the lots because the patients need the parking. But then a lot of the people also talk about perceived safety of downtown and abandoned buildings and stuff, and that's not the development department. So we need to look at this from multi-prong approach so that people feel safe walking. If there are abandoned cars, I know that the officer who manages and kind of tracks down the people and gets those cars towed was at this meeting and handed out her number, right? But I don't know that we're going to get the right answer from this study. I'm not saying stop it. I'm just saying I don't know if this will give us the right answer.
I just want to piggyback on that real quick, because a lot of the comments also were about parking and saying that, in certain situations, the city didn't allow enough parking. And I wonder if there's also an educational piece that's perhaps missing, of saying these are state restrictions, that have been imposed on us, and it's not the city saying we don't, you know, I don't know what we would do in another case, but just an educational piece, because I think the city is getting blamed for a lot of removal of parking minimums and those sorts of things, and just understanding where that decision is made and how it impacts the city, I think, is helpful as well. Councilor Shaw, did you have anything else? No? Any additional questions or comments? It sounds like thank you for all of the information that's coming forward and the business participation, and to just continue to collect data to inform our conversation in June.
A couple things outside of Councilor Stack wanting our data. Are we comfortable? Is the council comfortable with the June 17th? Again, we kind of had to shift this date, so I just want to make sure. Oh, is the June 17th date still a reasonable date to come back? And is there anything else besides additional data that we are providing that you would like information on to be presented?
Yeah.
I find the chart on slide 18 to be confusing and difficult to interpret. Number of days with overstays. So there were 2 days with almost 100 overstays.
No,
Is that what that means?
Sort of.
So maybe not this data, but a different kind of data, like how many people stayed 4 hours, how many people stayed 4 days, something like that.
Okay. This chart is actually telling you that of all of the overstays we had, about, I'm going to say 98 of them stayed 2 days. So they're basically repeat overstayers. That's the best way to describe them. And then of those same ones, there were 20 that overstayed 3 days. So those are the same. Of the 20 that were there, there are about 12. I'm looking at the bar graph. The 12 that overstayed 4 days. So it's basically one vehicle overstaying. And this is a great bit of data to tell you the repeats are likely ones where they're employees or they're those that live in the area itself. So when you look at the 14 to 24, 18, 20, or 7, those are going to be the ones that are there likely for reasons that are more than just visiting for their businesses.
I think I would just say that I do agree that it's super confusing. And so maybe for whoever is only there 2 days, like that should be there. And then whoever is there for 3 days. So break them out rather than combining them and having them cascade. I think just pure numbers of these are the ones who overstayed 2 days. These are the ones who overstayed 7 days. Are you talking about broadly breaking it out between Tigard Triangle? Because I worry about 30 different graphs for 30 different, that feels too much. But maybe a different graph for Tigard Triangle and downtown to be able to separate them. I think that's reasonable. Yeah. Yes.
I'm a little confused about this graph. So from the 5 days, there's let's say 5%, and then 6 days is more than 5 days? So I don't know if I'm just understanding it wrong.
Yeah, so these are, again, unique vehicles, so, and not necessarily in a row either. So this could be, those 14 days could have been every other day, or 7 days in a row and then weren't there. So they're not necessarily cars that have been abandoned, but they're cars who have multiple instances of overstaying the 2-hour limit.
Was that going to be your question?
Yeah, because I was trying to, because Samba, you referenced employees or residents, so then I could see, okay, residents might be 48 hours that they left a car there, an employee might be 8, come back, 8, come back. And that's what I was trying to distinguish, or an abandoned car, to what Sean said. So I was trying to get clarity on definition, so.
Okay.
Great feedback. We'll work on this graph and data.
Councilor who?
Thank you, Mayor. And after you send the letter out to the resident businesses, I would like to get a copy either after you send it or at the next council meeting packet. That would be great. Thank you.
Who knew that we would know so much about parking?
That and fats, oils, and grease.
We're really getting into the weeds on these topics. We're going to be experts. Any additional comments on parking before we move on? All right, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. The Tigard City Council will enter into an executive session to discuss property negotiations under ORS 192-6602E. All discussions are confidential and those present may disclose nothing from the session. Representatives of the news media are allowed to attend executive sessions as provided by ORS 192-6604, but must not disclose any information discussed. No executive session may be held for the purpose of taking any final action or making any final decision. Executive sessions are closed to the public, and this meeting will adjourn immediately after the executive session. Thank you so much. Good night, Tigard.